December 15, 2020, the Global Young Leaders Dialogue, or GYLD, was launched in Beijing. Chinese and international dignitaries, including ambassadors, government officials, heads of international organizations, global opinion leaders, and young influencers in different fields from different countries, participated in the launch event.
Now it's time for the next generation to take over.
Our shared vision for a brighter, more sustainable future is what brings us here today.
Bringing the young generation together is an indispensable part of global dialogue.
Global Young Leaders Dialogue, jointly initiated by the Center for China and Globalization and the Academy of Contemporary China and World Studies. The GYLD program is a unique platform for communication, education, and professional development for young achievers from diverse regional, cultural, disciplinary, sectorial, and professional backgrounds from across the globe. GYLD is committed to the vision of building a global community of shared future and pulls the strength of more young people with a global vision and from diverse backgrounds for the improvement of global governance. GYLD China Tours, White Diamond Campaign, GYLD Annual Forum, GYLD China Tours, Bridging China and the World. Young people from different countries will be invited to China Tours to get to know more about China's opening up and innovation, ecological protection, and poverty alleviation. They will also conduct inter-civilizational exchanges to experience for themselves a country that is trustworthy, lovable, and respectable, and to explore the spirit behind the story of China.
A great lesson on large exchange.
There is textbook China, and then there is the true China.
To be an ambassador of the culture here and to be a bridge.
让多元文化背景下的这么一些国际青年领袖加入到行走中国、感知中国、体验中国进程中来，通过他们的亲身实践体验咱们社会主义中国在新时代改革发展创新的新成绩。
We emphasize shared value for GYLD. The D, there are three meanings. First one is the dialogue. We emphasize dialogue a lot. Secondly, our D, it means diversity. We have the diversified members from different countries, different sectors, with different background. The third D meaning is that the diplomacy. We believe the people in GYLD members, they are from different countries. We think internationalized our members is quite important.
The Wise Diamond campaign calls for proposals from young experts around the world for innovative solutions to today's global challenges related to GYLD's focus areas. GYLD Annual Forum. Selected outstanding young leaders from different countries, internationally famous experts, and opinion leaders are invited to join the annual event. The participants exchange ideas on themes such as scientific and technological innovation and public health, climate change and sustainable development. Share the insight of young professionals, show the power of young people, make innovative recommendations on tackling global challenges.
If young leaders in China could take the lead in strengthening global multilateral institutions, the world will be a much better place.
And if we're to train the leaders for the future and make the discoveries that will improve lives, our perspective will have to be broader than our own backyard.
So I hope that all of you will be able to keep a cool head, be passionate about good things, think boldly, think out of the box.
Please step in. We need you, not only for fresh ideas, and that's already very important, but also for the energy you can bring into moving things forward.
Let the voices of tomorrow be heard. Follow us for more global dialogue.
From different continents, cultures, and perspectives, but one vision that we should have a shared future. Discuss what is the issue at hand from their perspective, what is being done so far, how they are personally involved in many initiatives that are contributing for a better tomorrow, and what are the missing gaps. So, John?
Yeah, I think as our keynote speaker said before, the climate change is it's not future things. It's already happened, already creates damages. It's already show how great effects will create to the human community. So it's not we just talk. The most important we need to act.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to hear our young talents from all over the world to how we can
act together. So this is what that's why we are calling this climate change and action. How can we act? So without further ado, let's first engage our panelist, who is also a GYLD member, Jacob Dreyer, Senior Editor for Business, Economics, Politics and Law at Palgrave. And Jacob, I think my question for you would be the same. In your work as well, you have previously talked about and written about how people in this field can contribute to the accomplishment and better manifestation of SDGs, our shared goals. So maybe briefly, 3 minutes first intervention, if you can talk about how you are contributing and what further you think can be done in light of the topic at the moment. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I regret that I couldn't be there in person. I'm calling in from Shanghai. I work publishing books at this company, Springer Nature. Most of the work that I'm publishing, including works from CCG, are of economics and politics in nature. So I'm trying to investigate China's political economy. But of course, my colleagues at Nature are looking at the problem of climate change from as it were, scientific or technical aspects. I always find it so enriching to have discussions between scientists and political scientists, because climate change is a climate problem. It's a problem about carbon and atmospherics. It's also a political problem. And some of the ways that climate change is manifesting lay bare the historical legacy of existing political problems. Most obviously colonialism, in the case of the flooding in Pakistan, at least from my perspective. We see in the past year unfolding climate crisis globally, whether that's the 40 Celsius weather in London, or the droughts that we saw in Sichuan province, or the ongoing forest fires in California, or the flooding in Pakistan. But what's also quite clear is that these crises affect populations in different ways. Just because wherever populations happen to be, that's where they find themselves. Climate change isn't coming to us in a global clean slate where we all are created equal, as the American Declaration of Independence suggests that humans are. Because, in fact, we are experiencing these crises in radically different ways. So that's the most apparent and obvious thing to me. And I can see that many people in the global north would be, it almost seems appealing to ignore it, forget about it, whatever, it's your problem. But I think that's a very short-sighted policy or strategy for a variety of reasons. The first is obviously that climate change does in fact affect European and American society in a variety of ways. Food shortages and inflation and energy crises are outcomes of climate change just as much as heat waves or floods are. The second is, as we see, I think it's another hurricane just hit Florida, about nearly 2 million Americans are without electricity. These problems really are global, no matter how much we might try to deny it. People whose perspectives are relentlessly Eurocentric or nationalist or centered on privileging one group of humans above the rest, well, that approach simply, it seems to me, is not useful in analyzing a problem which is truly global and which is going to manifest globally. But another thing that's quite apparent to me is that as climate crisis unfolds, there will be more and more pressure for migration from the most heavily and severely affected areas, such as Pakistan, to the global north. Well, we already have seen some of the kind of political controversy around mass migration unfolding. Arguably, this conflict in Syria, which saw millions of refugees going to value. There's no sense that being born with a U.S. passport means that you're likely to work more than a person from Pakistan. Only when we really can treat all humans as equal in value will we be able to begin making solutions to the problem of climate change. I guess that's all about my opinion. Now, what am I going to do about it? First of all, I would love to make Bulgaria's publishing platform available to any researchers or intellectuals or thinkers who are trying to approach these programs in problems in unique ways. You can feel free to contact me, and I would love to publish your work. Secondly, I myself have been researching very closely China's energy transition. And in the global north, we talk about the first world, the second world, and the third world. It seems to me clear enough that the global north, Western Europe, the United States, and Canada, they're sort of the first world where people overconsume resources and are relatively insulated. And it's also clear enough that the third world might look like places where there's an inadequate amount of resources to meet people's needs. It seems to me that China is situated somewhere in between as it tries to make radical and new answers to the needs of livelihood with its anti-poverty alleviation programs and its ongoing quest for carbon neutrality. So China is a place of a lot of paradoxes because, of course, China is also the world's biggest carbon emitter. But as I look at the renewable energy sector, I see if China is able to solve its own problems with climate change, it will also be able to solve problems in other countries in the global south. Just for example, by its investment in solar panels, China has driven down the global price of solar panels, making this technology accessible to everyone, not just rich people in the global north, but notionally speaking to people across the global south as well. So climate change is a problem, as I understand it in the global south, it's not just about how to stop emissions. It's about the fact that people today do not have adequate food, energy, shelter, and access to political representation. So only by solving these two problems together and considering climate change as a holistic problem that it is, can we move forward. And of course, if there's any way I can do that, I would love to help. Thanks so much for offering me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I think really one of the key themes and issues that we have talked about today is about climate injustice, how it really is the global south which has contributed barely anything to the issue that we are facing at hand and what can be done. And I think that it's a very important point to raise that really we are so connected that the issue of climate refugees is going to come back to the global north. And there is enough incentive, enough reason to act, to come together to seek solutions and to make sure that the situation doesn't worsen further. So now over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. And I'm thinking maybe you will talk about your idea. In the previous you introduced to me is you can do the kind of carbon trading system between the national park and the developed areas of China. So maybe we will have an expert here to can talk about more about this. So we have Alexandra Janas, the researcher of International Institute of Green Finance, CUFE.
Thank you. Yeah, so first I wanted to start from the background because my thoughts were really with Pakistan during these months. I've been actually following on Twitter from the comfort of my office. What's been happening there, and there's I came across this quote that really stuck with me. It was that's how we're really going to experience climate change, by just watching, videos on Twitter of floods and fires until the moment that the recording person is you. So I very much agree with Ambassador what he said, that now is Pakistan. In the future it could be, not even could be, in the future it will be other countries having this too. So for me, Pakistan was the moment when I realized that the climate change came faster than we thought and much more aggressive than we thought. And it's not just an abstract concept. It has a face of those millions of people who are just right now sitting on the edges, not having basic stuff like food. So seeing this, I think is a very important part of the conversations we are having. Just not thinking about climate change emissions, thinking about people and their dramas. Millions of people right now suffering this. So I think it's very important to keep in mind. And what's most heartbreaking about it, I think it could have been avoidable. We know that, tons of carbon emissions have been pumped, and they are the cause of what's happening in Pakistan. I think nobody has doubt about that, what caused that. And I very much agree that climate issue is not a climate problem, it's a justice problem. Who's emitted those and who's paying for those? So I think that one of the main focus right now is should be giving those developing countries more platforms to speak up. Like today, for example, because developed countries promise climate financing, like 100 billion has been delivered to now until 12 years. So, and I know I recognize it's not easy, to give developing countries a platform to speak up, but we need to create more opportunities for developing countries to speak up about that and get their justice and get support needed, the support they deserve. So maybe a little bit about what I do, because I joined my job in green finance full of enthusiasm about how financial sector and green finance and how much potential lies in green finance and solving those problems. And of course, no doubt, to solve those problems we need financing for both mitigation and adaptation to climate change. But as I've been working on it, I started to see the limitations. I was just asking questions. Why what the world leaders are doing, it's COP27. We're talking about all the time. And why there are no results so far? Why are we seeing things getting worse and worse and emissions getting higher and higher? I just, started to trying to find answers to my questions. So I think that part of my journey was kind of realizing that it's not about climate change, it's about system change. It's about what's causing climate change in the first place. Because here we're talking quite narrow, and we're thinking about quite narrow climate change, but it's not just one issue. It's very much interconnected to everything we do, all other systems. So when we try to solve this problem, we should find the root cause. So what I'm finding right now is the root cause is how our economic system works. What are we prioritizing? How are we seeing our relationship with nature? How we extract things from nature, how we see growth, what do we think is wealth? That's why I think future solutions should also focus on those bigger questions, on redefining what we think is wealth, what we think is growth, what should be the direction of the growth, not just throwing GDP numbers, but what do we want to do with this growth? So I think those are the big things. Among those, even with financing, questions that we should be asking ourselves is, where does the power lie? Who's making those decisions in our global system? So I'm hoping to engage more in those conversations as well in the future, not just looking small at the climate change itself. So I think.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra. I think you really point to the deep problem, our system, our evaluation, how to evaluate what is the development, what is the growth, right? So I think China raised the issue called green development. So I think it's kind of a change, and also the world also realizes this. But I also want to hear how we can act, how we can make some difference to this problem. So next, I want to.
Yes, I think. Thank you so much. And I think I'd also like to add a point that even when we talk about the BRI development and also learning from China's journey, it is helping many countries along the BRI think differently about defining what is success for them, and that climate change is not just a faraway issue, it's very much something we can think about, we can grow towards helping build our economies in a way that's compatible with the future we want to seek. So thank you so much. And now we may take a detour, if that's okay with our next panelist. Let's bring in Lucy Tong, Program Officer, Global Alliance of Universities on Climate, International Academic Outreach Officer, and Institute of Climate Change and Sustainable Development at Tsinghua University. Lucy, your thoughts. You've been involved in this for so long. I know you are passionate about better, leaner, cleaner, and greener world. So how do you think we can act? What can we really do?
Yes, thank you so much. Apologies for cutting in the orders of things. I have a meeting afterwards. I have to run early. First of all, my thoughts goes to Pakistan because of the floods that's been going on. But I think my thoughts will go from two directions. First is the loss and damage that we're missing right now, and also the 100 billion that we're also missing in climate finance. So first, the loss and damage. I think what's happening in Pakistan is evidence of what is missing in climate mitigation right now. So we are missing not just the immediate relief packages, the immediate money that's going into Pakistan, but we're also missing what is not quantifiable. So the lives are being lost, the families that are broken. We need to have COP27 have developed countries to do something about the loss and damage that has been missing in climate negotiations in the past decade. And on to my second point about the 100 billion, I'd like to share a data that I've recently discovered in OECD. So the OECD tracks the 100 billion climate finance that is supposed to go from developed countries to developing countries every single year. And they track how much of that is actually being realized. And to date, ever since 2013, there has been $260 billion that has been missing from the entire pledge from developed countries. And we're talking about being more ambitious by 2025, but we're not even meeting the targets right now. And so I can't really talk about having the adaptation or having the ability to self-help on platforms or on communication channels in developing countries, when developed countries are not even providing enough money to countries like Pakistan. And speaking of which, 100 billion, only maybe 20% of those are going into adaptation funds. And first of all, that's not enough. And then you can't really put money in places where you'll get a return because those are more feasible when it comes to private sector investments. And for public sector investments, it's more important for them to put the money in adaptation so that so that private sectors will act, and then they will be able to mobilize more funding. And now talking about action. In my capacity at the think tank, I also wear another hat, which is the Global Alliance of Universities on Climate. This is an alliance of 15 universities around the world that is trying to do something about climate change. And it is very Western driven, so a lot of our universities are from the US and the UK. But we do have the BRIC countries, namely Tsinghua representing China, and then we have Stellenbosch representing South Africa, and then we have ISC representing India, and Federal University of Rio de Janeiro representing Brazil. And so we are doing things actively from the bottom-up level, and we want to get everyone's, we want to get everyone on board. And so ever since 2019, when we were first founded, we started things like the graduate forum, like summits that mobilizes youth. And this year we're upping our actions again, and so we are going to launch a climate week right before COP27 to mobilize different organizations to participate in the climate action around the world. And we already have organizations like PNG, like Bloomberg on board, and then we have UN organizations who are willing to come and contribute their efforts. And I'm calling on a lot of our friends sitting here to come and participate in our Climate Week, and also in the audience. I like to close with a positive note, and I like to talk about a story that I've heard from a friend. My friend is in Jordan, and she is the founder of the first climate NGO in Jordan. And the first project that they did in Jordan was actually to teach girls how to swim. And this sounds very non-climate related, but at the time when they were first founded, there were 3 floods that happened within a month in Jordan that came to very devastating results. Very not as much as how it's happening in Pakistan, but to a level where it's devastating lives and families. And these girls who learned how to swim, and the background is that Jordan, as Muslim girls, you're not allowed to go to public swimming pools to learn how to swim. And these girls were the backbone of the families who helped their families survive in the flood because they learned how to swim. And so I think one thing is to ask for more help from developed countries, but the other is to self-help. And if it's not us, then who? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. I think there's so many aspects. Number one, multilateralism. How BRICS, I mean, this is something like a grouping, right? And it's helping countries within the BRICS community act better, envision better. And I think we can think about something like this with respect to the Shanghai Spirit. We also have the Deputy SG of the SCO. And also for GYLD, building a community that cares, that acts, that thinks globally is what we are trying to build. So let's hope that us and everyone here can also contribute. Let us know how we can partner or think of this further. And lastly, I'll say self-help, 100%. There are ways we're also in Pakistan thinking the same. We have to think, yes, there is a need to act globally, but in the end, we have better resources. We can utilize ourselves in a better way. So thank you so much. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Hugh Slater, Energy and Climate Specialist, Client Earth. We met in Hong Kong. You gave a fantastic presentation. I think we need more experts from Pakistan as well with your kind of expertise. So over to you. What do you think needs to be done?
Thanks, Sue. First of all, I want to echo my fellow panelists' sort of sympathies with Pakistan. The last couple of weeks have been just devastating, and I expect that there are people here at the embassy that probably know people or have family affected, and I can only imagine the sort of anxiety of being far away from family and friends at a time like that. But somewhat, something of an idea when massive bushfires, wildfires spread through the area of Australia that I'm from a few years ago, where I had family and friends that were living in, and being far away from home. It's it's obviously it would be more anxious being there, but not being able to be close to those people that you love and care about and give them help and support is a terrible thing. So to anyone that is sort of thinking about those issues, definitely my heart goes out to you. So just brief introduction. I work for an NGO called Client Earth, which is primarily an environmental law NGO. We work on the development of laws and the implementation of laws to support environmental protection around the world. We're headquartered in London, do a lot of work in Europe, but we're also increasingly doing work in other parts of the world, including in China for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. We've been doing work to support capacity building for judges and prosecutors in China that are working on development of environmental law here in China. There's been the establishment of dedicated environmental courts that now hear cases that are brought by the public, by people affected by environmental pollution, for example. And also training prosecutors who have the capacity to go and bring public interest cases themselves. So where there is a major case of environmental impact, prosecutors can go out and gather the evidence and bring that case in the interest of the local community against whether it's usually like a private company that has not adhered to its obligations. So that's quite a powerful new tool that China is exploring and developing as a way to empower communities to improve their environmental health, and I think it's going to be something to watch in the coming years. We also do some work supporting the Environmental Ministry on their work to green the Belting Road Initiative. So there's been quite a bit of work. There's a dedicated sort of committee that helps some of the international organizations that are engaged with China to provide input and support and ideas to how the Belt and Road can be more environmentally friendly, and that's had some pretty big impacts in the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen obviously the commitment to not invest in further coal projects overseas, but also there was a system which was supported, which essentially set up a traffic light system so that all potential projects that come under the banner of Belt and Road are assessed against either red, yellow, or green. Red either really bad for the environment, probably should be avoided completely. Green are really good. Let's put money there. And orange, some criteria around whether a project's environmental impact can be mitigated and still be supported, or whether they should be avoided. So that's a really important, I think, development as well. I don't want to talk too much about myself, but on this issue of the floods, I don't want to repeat the others as well, but just to add a couple of things that I think a lot of time, floods that we've seen in Pakistan recently, but also in China last year in Henan, we've seen devastating floods also in Southeast Asia and Thailand, are definitely now attributable to climate change. But there's also a strong linkage to our management of natural systems, so forests and wetlands. It often becomes clear that some of the impacts from these major climate events are accentuated by the degradation of some of our natural systems. And so we need to think about that issue in concert. That's really important. And then just to reiterate, I mean, you asked about what we can do. I mean, I'm sitting here as someone from a developed country, and I'm obviously not representing the developed world or my own government, but it's very true that the Paris Agreement commitment has not been kept, right? And it's a major letdown for the whole world when we want to avoid climate catastrophe. I think it's fair to say that of the developed countries, Europe is way out front. Europe has been extremely proactive, both in terms of its own domestic policies, but also in terms of setting up mechanisms that funds can flow to the developing world. But too often in countries like the US and my own country, there's some very strong, usually conservative political elements that still hold back action. And it's to be hoped that those guys keep losing elections basically in those countries and figure out that it's not a winning strategy to put all of the burden of climate on the developing world. There's a few milestones coming up. I mean, the US is experiencing having a congressional election in a couple of months, and it's hopefully that goes in a positive direction. Australia's recently had an election, but we're still have this sort of climate wars in our politics. So for those of us in developed countries, I think it's on us to kind of get out and get active politically where we can to try and change governments, basically. That's what we can do from a developed country perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, Hugh. I think I'm glad to know you are used the law to help the world, that help the community to against the environment damage. I remember someone in China in previous law, environmental law said it's without teeth. Right now, the China's environmental protection have really some teeth to really can forbidden some people to do the bad things. And also you mentioned the election or it's really just like Alexandra said, it's a system problem, and not only in the national level but also in the international level. So I want to next invite Joseph Oliver Mendu, the co-founder of the China Africa Youth Federation, and also the doctor student of Peking University. Yeah, study Peking University, study international relations. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I will directly cut to the chase because of time. So the Pakistani case actually relates a lot to the African case. If we look at the Notre Dame Global Initiative and Index, which states that 8 to 9 out of 10 countries, most vulnerable countries, are Africans. So you will see that, but at the same time, Africa as a continent actually produces less than 4% of the global CO2. Yes, less than 4% CO2 global emissions, but pays one of the highest prices for global warming. So looking at the Pakistani cases, we relate also, and also the sentence that I kept hearing, it is today's Pakistan and tomorrow, no, it's already happening in Africa. For example, I can take the example of Niger, where they've been having prolonged aridity, threatening crops, livestock, and also they're dealing with food insecurities. And of course, you guys have heard about the drought in the Horn of Africa. Yeah, it is a historic drought in the Horn of Africa, and it is affecting humans, it is affecting animals, etc. And also in terms of raining, you have South Sudan, and you have, for example, Chad. We also have exactly. So we kind of also feel it is relatable when it comes to Africa. So what is done within the continent? Actually, the young people, young Africans, actually start believing that it is actually it's a great time to take the destiny with our own hands. So we have a bunch of initiatives that are launched on the continent, especially consider the fact that Africa, we know, is very gifted in terms of, Africa has everything, a lot of assets for sustainable prosperity, and not only in terms of, I would say, natural resources, but also the world's youngest and, the largest working young populations. So we have tremendous of initiatives. It doesn't matter if it's from the academic sector with Wangari Maathai, which is a Kenyan Nobel Prize winner. She launched the Appeal Africa Speaks Up on climate change, and we also have, at the youth level, we have the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change, which is actually an umbrella to a lot of organizations that are connected closely or by far to climate. And we also do have green African youth organizations. So it's just to say that a lot of initiatives have been set up in Africa, and I can even give you the example of one movement that started in 2011. We call that the Africa Youth Climate Justice Caravan, which is going across a lot of African countries. It's just a way of the African youth to raise voices, on climate injustice. So, which brings me to my own perspective. Okay, what needs to be done? I was fortunate enough to go to Pakistan twice. Definitely, I was invited by NUST University and under the UNHCR and also climate change, and it was about representing. They actually told me to bring the African voices because they wanted to. It was a South-South cooperation kind of meeting, and I was very inspired with my two visits to NUST University, and from then, and that's also what my platform is doing. we are connecting voices, because we don't need, at the end of the day, a lot of things are happening in Africa, and you realize that we don't need, we don't need necessarily one person or one big country to do a lot, but we need many countries or many people to do a little. So, and with connected voices, we can actually achieve a more sustainable growth, a more meaningful, we can have much more impact. So I think, that's why from my 2 visits to Pakistan, we relate so much. We have so much, in common. I discussed a few weeks with Pakistani youth in Pakistan, age 12, and it was very inspiring. And then I think connected voices, right? We already have a lot of platforms, we already have a lot of initiatives, but now how to, what is the way forward? What is the way forward? See, connected voices, right? Connected voices in terms of course, youth from around the world. That's why, I'm also always with GYLD because this is also kind of the narrative that you're putting at stake. So youth from all over the world, different backgrounds, articulating demands, and making sure that their voice are heard when negotiations are being made, which actually touches on the youth. The youth are very important for Africa. See, 60% under 25, so under 25 years old, 60% of the African population. So there is a need to also increase the participation of the youth to make sure that the voices are heard. As I said, we don't lack initiative, but we lack of, the voices are not necessarily, heard. And then we need more voices, more young voices to be heard, and especially from underrepresented youth, right? The underrepresented, the youth group. And then also we need the youth to be at the forefront of global change and innovations. Yeah, and as I said, it is together we have to do a little to achieve sustainability. I think I will stop there to just leave the opportunity to the others, and I can come back later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olivier. Really, I think one of the things you mentioned is how together we need to do a little. And what I really appreciate about the African continent, number one, all of my friends say the continent because it is a collective identity of Africa. And yes, as you mentioned, it's relatable. Climate injustice is not just Pakistan, it's the global south. And when a continent, its youth at least decide to unite, a lot more is possible. And that's why we, in Pakistan especially, and South Asia, we talk about the Shanghai spirit because we see that regions prosper and perish together. So it's very important. I think Africa is an example for global South unity, and I hope that more young people in other areas of the regions of the global South can learn from the African example. So we need a lot of dialogue, a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding, a lot of avenues to act. Now over to John.
So next we would like to invite Victoria Koo, the co-founder and president of Scholar Network, please.
Thank you, John. I was surprised. You know that.
Ladies first.
Oh yeah, I was prepared to be the last one to speak. So I should summarize. Well, I must say that, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and it's great to be among friends here. And I always thought about myself as somebody who is not involved in climate, and I think we were raised in a way where we're supposed to pick what is the industry or profession that you want to do. So if you're a doctor, you're a doctor. And recently, the realization among many of the friends that are also sitting here, we always have the discussion that all of the issues that we're facing collectively. And you cannot say anymore that you're not involved in climate when your friends in Pakistan are experiencing the devastated floods. And I represent the youth organization called Scholar Network. And we work a lot with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization region, which recently, after the summit of the heads of states, expanded, and now it has 26 countries. That represents almost half of the world population. And among this population, the youth representation is huge. And the region is the developing region, and it's also a very young region. And at Scholar, we have teams based in 10 cities of 7 countries. And guess why the number of cities is more than the number of countries? And which country is the most active one? And that's Pakistan. We have the most active Pakistani friends and youth who are right now developing the hubs in Lahore, where Zoom is also from.
Same university, yes.
Yes, from LUMS, in Islamabad, in Karachi. And we've seen also, I believe in Beijing, with a lot of the international activities, the Pakistani young people, they're always very united and always connected. And when we saw the floods happening in Pakistan, we thought, what is it that we can do as the community? Because the purpose of the community, despite of the fact that we build a house, we work in education and culture and entrepreneurship, and we try to build up the educational soft skills for young people, but the essence of the community is in bringing social impact. And what is the most direct way to bring social impact when you see people who are in need of the humanitarian help? And we understand that maybe as one person or individuals, we're not able to do that much. But collectively, as many of you have mentioned today, we are able to do much more. And we are launching a campaign, and the launch is actually tomorrow. So I'd like to invite everybody as well. It's 4 to 6 p.m. It's online. We'll have happy to and really humbled to have the support from the embassy. And also we have connected with the local NGOs in Pakistan, and we thought, how can we get companies to donate? So we're going to do events here. The entire month is going to be dedicated to Pakistan. We are directing from, running 2 different directions. One track is everything that has to do with awareness, because people are not very much aware of the damage until you either know somebody or you open YouTube or news and you actually see people and see their homes just covered by the water, and see people saying that they've lost everything that they had, and people saying that, oh, we've not seen anything like that in 35 years, parents or grandparents saying that. One of our members in Lahore, unfortunately, his family was, not his family's fine, thanks God, but his house, his home, was also destroyed by the flood, and tomorrow he's going to share his experience. So when you have people who are part of your team who are affected by the flood, who understand that, oh, climate change is not something that you can say that, oh, I'm not a part of it, because everybody is. And with this 1 month campaign, we are doing online videos with hashtags, so we're using social media as much as we can, and we want to really spread the word on the international agenda, international arena, using all the possible social medias in China and abroad to show our support to Pakistan, but also show that this is what home is about. And we have Alicia who is sitting here from Scholar team and a few other Scholar members, but we want this campaign to be not only we support Pakistan, but also what is home to you, and we invite everybody to share what is home to each and every one of you to show that we have this appreciation and support. At the same time, we are running this t-shirt competition, and the topic of the competition design is unity. So we want to dedicate this to Pakistan as well, and then we'll do merchandise, we'll sell, we will do all of the profits to donations. It might not be a lot, but if this is going to be enough to maybe help one family for a few weeks or months, I think that would be great already and worth it, really. And at the same time, we understand that as individuals, again, we cannot do much, but we can put together the resources from the companies that we have. And a lot of the Chinese and other international companies that we're contacting, they, well, first of all, the social corporate responsibility is something that all of the big companies want to do. And we are urging all the companies to join and donate. And we thought, oh, the transfer abroad might be a bit hard, so how can we do it in China? And we have the support from the embassy, and then the companies can donate directly to the embassy account. So everything in our capacity that we can do, we are going to do it, and we're also open to the suggestions and more ideas and collaborations, because we understand that the consequences of this flood disease is not something that we, even as the world, can probably help solve in a month. It will take much longer, and it will take much longer to rebuild the country. But we want to tell all our friends, brothers and sisters from Pakistan that we are standing together with them, no matter where we come from. And I think this is what Lucy has talked about, being able to do what we can at our capacity. And the fact that we're sitting together, a panel from 7 people from 7 different countries, already speaks a lot about the action that young people can take today. And we are able to do a lot within our capacity, whether within the institutions or NGOs, even at the personal capacity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vika. I think especially, there's so much. Scholar, personally, I've been part of Scholar since 2018. And just like GYLD, Scholar is about connecting, helping us empathize with one another, befriend. When we're friends, we care. And when we care, we think we care for each other enough like we would for our own. And I think that's exactly the kind of shared identity, shared vision that we want to build towards. And really, as you pointed out,
I almost cried at some point.
I know.
Because it's so close to my heart.
It's so close, right? And I guess that's the whole point. No matter when you talk about mindset shift, it's about no matter what you're doing. For example, we have Jacob, who's publishing, and he's contributing in his own way. And as a community and a platform, you could be using this towards financial, material gain, but instead, we think about impact. We define success differently. It's about impact, affecting lives positively, creating synergy. So thank you, and we can think of further more ways for our communities to deepen collaboration and spread the word, the positive word. Yeah. So now, without further ado, it's John's.
The last but not least, would like to invite our long friend Renato. He's based in Wuhan. Yeah.
Especially here
Yeah.
for this dialogue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Renato. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's super.
So yeah, it's good to be home. It's good to be among friends, and I think there's a great weight that I bear here right now, because as a Brazilian, probably everybody knows what we are feeling now. So to make clear what's going on, I don't want to be egocentric and talk too much about me, but recover a bit of the history of my country fighting global warming. That didn't start like nowadays. We had strong movements back in the end of 70s. So in the 70s, we had people already living out of the forest, and these people were dying to protect the forest already. So we had this great leader called Chico Mendes, and he was killed because he was protecting the forest. And he left a follower called Marina Silva. She was the Minister of Environment of Lula in the first government. So by any chance, I had the opportunity in the first, of her policies for education. She called the leadership, the young leadership of the country. And she built what they call the environmental education. So they got the best universities and they trained people to organize environmental education. And what is the basis for that? Was to teach local community the history of their connection with the environment. So that was, imagine, started to be taught in the end of 70s. It starts to happen in the middle of 2000s, it was 2005, 2006. And then we are going through what we are happening right now in Brazil. That's this leadership that doesn't really care about the forest. So this guided me to pursue this path, and I became a lawyer specializing in public administration, environmental law, and I came to China looking for the environmental policies for development of how China was developing, how they were looking to the environment, what was their perspective. And for the ones that remember the time, the days were dark, the clouds were gray, so like things were tough. And it was a great lesson for me. I had the opportunity to work in a project which like about technology transfer from Europe to China, which how I care. So I helped to implement this project in that moment, and they taught me the importance of energy in this whole process. So how energy was crucial to decide how environment was affected and how people's lives would be affected. And that woke me up, and I started going deeper in this path. So back in 2015, I had the opportunity to go to Pakistan. So that's my second time in this embassy, and it was a beautiful journey. So like, they gave me a visa in a very good fashion. And I took the trip through Xinjiang, was like developing the time to cross Karakoram Highway, and like was interesting because they had like a lot of problems with earthquakes, so buses were crossing every 20 days. And I had the chance to take the last bus in the next 20 days. So I saw like how people were suffering, like being object of like natural disasters. And that's when you start to understand what's community. Community is about humans getting together and shaping nature in a way that it feeds us and keeps its natural flow. So, but in that year, was already some floods happening there, and people were already concerned because you lose crops, you lose living conditions, women and kids suffer a lot. Why? Because you know they're the first ones to suffer. Some women don't learn like how to swim because they're most at home, or their home are destroyed, they have to live at street, and then they lose the father or the mother, so the source of economy. So it's 10 years of crisis that you go through, because the whole generation lost. So that's when you start to understand that like the fight with like this world disaster is generational. It goes from generation to generation. And it's not an easy thing. What we are seeing today in Pakistan, we will affect like the next 10, 20 years of these people. So it's not a problem of Pakistan, it's the world community problem. And then I'll link you to Brazil. I remember like, I also went for research in that same, like 2016 to Oslo. And that was an interesting year because that was the first time that Oslo had colder days than the North Pole. Which was like astonishing, everybody was scared. And then you had like, let me see, like 2016? Yes, 2016 I went to the Amazon forest to visit. We were doing a consultants for a project in the Amazon forest, Native Americans, doing ecological project, like they were trying to recover this ecotourism to the biggest mountain in the forest. But when we changed the government, all those things were affected. And those things were changed, and those policies were abandoned. We couldn't lose 20% of the forest this year, otherwise we couldn't reverse, and the forest couldn't regenerate. We lost 26% this year. So we need like 4 years, one government change, and everything, like 20 years of policy was lost. And we were not the first one to get affected. Look at Pakistan. This is like, it's not Pakistan's fault, it's like the world's fault, like we are building that. And so like, not to get like too long to like, just last weekend I was walking down by the river, the Yangtze River, the third biggest, widest river in the world. One part of the river you can cross walking, barefoot. It looks like a desert, it's like a kilometer of like flat ground with a very shallow water to walk through. So we're talking about the first martyrs of the global warming. We're talking about like a change that compromised civilization. Remember Plato? Plato left us with a good lesson, a story, like a mythological thing that's like the Atlantis, right? So this was people that were so developed that they create something that was good for their civilization but destroyed them. There we go with carbon, right? So there we are with CO2 like killing us. So what I see today here is the opportunity to build like what is to come in the next 20 years. That's what I've been seeing. Like 2015, we already warned. That change was not enough. It was not safe enough. Europe was guiding us. Yes, they were ahead of everything, like carbon, like credits, like renewable energy. They quit it all. They're not the leaders any longer. Just this year, they start like putting what? Go back.
So CO2 back. Everything is back as it was before 2015. We are having a world crisis of energy. We're having a war right now. Like, what is this war about? It's energy. It's about global warming. Everybody's scared of food. Okay, well, it's like we're going like animals, like just looking for a source of, you know, basic energy. Energy. That's the thing that I was trying to talk about. That's what we have to start to educate it. Like, I think education is the center. I think China is giving a good leadership of like how to change it, putting humans back to the center. Economy is to feed humans, not humans to feed energy. I mean,
We got it.
you know.
All these U words.
Yeah. But we're there. We're trying to make this change. So I'm very pleased to be here to share this opportunity. Congratulations for bringing this debate over. We have a big war to fight against ourselves and to change up this culture. It's a slowly and long process. Look at Brazil. And we are fighting to change the president just like this weekend. So I hope we can make it and give a clear sign that. And I'm pleased to be after an African and a lady. Like, that's a way to change it.
Yeah, thank you, Renato. You definitely give us a picture, you know, also looking back to the history, you know. For now, we are also kind of go back, you know, the Europe this winter will be cold and we will buy more fossil energy. So it's kind of bike, but we cannot do much thing about it. So how we can, you know, find a way forward, even slowly, even little, but we cannot go back. No. So yeah, thank you for your speech.
Thank you for being here. Really, we have so many perspectives, and we realize when we talk that we have so much, we can relate to each other much more than we would have imagined. And I think there's so much that I think so much all of us want to say, but let's open the floor for questions. Yeah. Maybe you can come in front. Or I can spend a mic. I think we can take 2 or 3 questions. I know that there is a man named Gibson in this room who also has a very important question. And I know we have Mr. Haseeb, who is a banker who can give us advice, yeah, from the Pakistani community. Let's take 2 or 3 questions and our panelists can answer, yes? We are lucky to have such a diverse range of perspectives.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for your insightful views and perspectives on this issue. That was really interesting. I would like to ask this question that I thought of when Alexandra was presenting her part. And it's about how you mentioned that it is time to uplift the voices of these third world countries, and that's where the onus should be when dealing with such an issue. But I would like to ask you, do you think it's possible for this to be done in an effective and adequate manner in the short term, in the near future? Because it seems like we must rely on first world countries for this to be done. But I wonder if this is even possible at all. Or do we need to wait till the devastating effects of climate change arrive at the doorsteps of these first world countries? Or is this issue in Pakistan, other third world countries, enough to maybe cause them to take action? Just your perspective. You don't need to have a definitive answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anbeen. And I think we can take a few questions. I know that Wahid, Ahmed and Gibson. Gibson, you have a question? We can pass the mic on to Gibson. So one question from Anbeen to Alexandra or Ola.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gibson, and I work with Dr. Robin Bisham here, the co-organizer of Global Energy Security Forum, annual forum. And then, so I have my a question here for you, ladies and gents. How do you perceive the issue of EV, electronic cars, to be more specific, the recycling and the processing of the lithium batteries? Because as far as we know, some experts, both domestic and international experts, they expressed out that electronic vehicles, at the end of the day, the lithium battery is, even if it's not properly recycled, is going to be more polluted than regular fossil fuel. If a well-designed fossil fuel-powered vehicle is in fact actually, according to these experts, is much more environmentally friendly than so-called alternative solution electronic vehicle. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Gibson. So we have, who will want to answer this question? I think yes, both of you can. So now we have also for Renato and Hugh, and I know that we have a few other questions. Wahid Ahmed Zai has a question.
Well, thank you, Zoom, for giving me this opportunity. I'm Wahid from Afghanistan. I was born in Pakistan, so it's very close to home, you know. And while I was listening to the panel, I was both excited and conflicted. I agree with a lot of the things that you guys say, but I also have some concerns that I want to talk about. This, as a youth, sometimes when I was listening to you guys, I was trying to think about, what should I do? It's what is the best thing that we as youth, as ourselves, we can do, right? We talk about the policies, we talk about the economy, we talk about the financing and stuff, right? But sometimes maybe generalizing such topics might be too much. Sometimes we need to go back and look at each case one by one and see what is specifically for this flood in Pakistan we can do, right? And I think one of the things that we want to do is especially because I was born there, I was raised, so I know the most important thing that we can do is help them economically. Not economically in a way that we need to provide funds and relief, but economically in a way that right now, if everything is destroyed, it's time to build better. It's actually, there's challenges exist, but at the same time there's opportunities, right? And unfortunately there's a lot of crises going on, food crisis, housing and stuff, right? But now we actually have a better opportunity to build it better. Yes, a lot of houses destroyed, let's build better, more resilient houses. The food shortages, let's better systems, right? And if I have to come back because a lot of you are in different sectors and stuff, I want to ask you personally, what advice would you give to a youth of Pakistan, to a Pakistani youth right now who is in Pakistan, how he can take action? Let's forget about governments, let's forget about the 100 billions, probably we will never see the face of it. Let's put the responsibility back on the youth, on ourselves. I would love to know everybody's opinion, one opinion for a Pakistani youth, what he should do to deal with this crisis now. What he should do to deal with future. Is it education? Is it financing? Is it skills? I would really love to know more about insight from a very macro perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wahid. So Wahid's question is, I guess, for everyone. And do we have another question? From Mr. Haseeb.
I would just like to, actually, first of all, I'm sorry I was a bit late for joining for most of the time I was here. I'm representing Pakistan's bank. It's called Askari Bank of Pakistan, and I'm the chief representative for this bank in Beijing. And I'm also a graduate of Tsinghua. I graduated 20 years ago, so I'm also a Tsinghua alumni. My question to probably all of us who are sitting here, and we're also not sitting here probably, but it's an important question. What exactly is leading us towards this climate change, not only in Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, the region, but the entire world? A lot of tests are taking place, known and unknown. A lot of radioactive activities are taking place, known and unknown. A lot of strategic military exercises are taking place, known and much unknown. We are sharing border with India on one side, with Afghanistan on one side. On Indian part, we have Kashmir. We are having a lot of activities. It's one of the most militarized zones of Pakistan. We have Afghanistan, where we have, unfortunately, we have disturbed the entire region for the past 40 years. Probably all the big players involved in that. It's, as my friend from Afghanistan mentioned, it's the time to rethink how we, being the youth, can play our role, because we have this political leadership, we have the military leadership, we have the party's leadership, but then we have us, and the youth community represents at least 60% or plus of the entire population. So it's a big, if you go for an international elections, youth can decide probably if they want to say right now that it's morning. It will be morning as per the elections result decided by the youth. So we need to decide in a certain perspective that how we look towards our earth, our globe for now and in future, one. And secondly, these all issues, for example, climate change is taking place, other changes are taking place. How can we address the root causes? What really do we need? Do we really need, because food security is becoming a biggest problem. It's not the military, it's the food. Are we going to be eating atomic bombs? No. The people on earth, they need food security, they need climatic security, they need any and every kind of security which we can imagine. So let's, with the panel which is sitting here and facilitated by Ms. Zoon and our dear friend, I would request that today's scenario and in future scenario, we can come with the root causes, where we can address the root causes and go to the scenarios where we can think that how to address it in the way that we go for a good, a peaceful 2030, a peaceful 2040, a peaceful 2050, because these are the years which are lying ahead of us. What is gone is already gone. So just this was a little bit from me, and thank you all my dear friends for being here with us and guiding us with so much lovely information. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll just quickly make a quick comment. I think this reminds me of the Shanghai vision as well, that the real threats we face are collective, right? So when we want to make lives better, we really have to think about building trust so that our resources, collective energy, are expended to address the threats that we face collectively. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Sarah from China Radio International from Pakistan. And I just want to add one other thing. CFCs, we are forgetting something, that these luxuries and what Nasib mentioned, the radioactivity and all. CFCs are also something poisonous, very poisonous. No doubt we are cutting the forests, we are, the agricultural land is squeezing day by day. But definitely this air conditioning, these refrigerators, these radioactivities, they are also causing this huge climate change. And the other thing my brother just mentioned here, we were talking about the Pakistani youth. Let me tell you one other thing. Although I am very much away from my country, but somehow I try to keep in touch with people over there. And I knew many of our youth who are right in the middle of all those affected areas. And they are not talking about money, they are not talking about aid, they are actually trying to deliver. They are constructing, I think near Dera Ghazi Khan, which is badly affected by floods, they built 1,000 what we say,
for the refugees.
For the refugees,
Camps,
they
okay.
created shelter homes.
Yeah, 1,000
with,
tents.
I think
Yeah, 1,000 tents maybe?
No, not tents.
Shelter homes.
Shelter homes, special homes with special material.
Okay.
And they generated it on their own. Plus, Punjab University students, they created water purifier for the flood affected areas. It's a machine and you can purify the water for drinking purposes over there as well. Plus youth are also there. The medical students are there, and many other, not only students, professional doctors are also there. And they are putting up special emergency clinics over there. And right now there was a big issue raised by the people over there about the pregnant women. So they established emergency hospitals for them on their own. They were not taking aid from anyone. And that is the youth of Pakistan. They are right now doing all these things. And these are just few things I have mentioned here.
Thank you. Thank you. I think a round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ms. Sarah. Let's have as a quick, I know we said we'll wrap up around 5, but let's do as soon as possible. A few questions, comments, one by one, and then we conclude for now. Yes? You go first. You're sitting next to me.
Thank you very much. Those are amazing questions. I really love like everybody was really listening and you want more. So that's really awesome. I actually want to answer all of those, but I'll give you a chance here. So first question about to me about how do we provide more opportunities for the developing countries. I mean, if I was in power, of course I would make it happen. But unfortunately, that's not how things work, and it's just simply years, of structural problems where the global north has bigger say at things. But actually, today I just learned about the WTO Director General. I was not, because, probably you guys all know that right now in big international organizations, the top hats are like white old dudes most of the time. So also I want to point out how there's not diversified outlook they might bring to the table, because they come from basically same background, same cultural, understanding of things. So how important that is to bring different views to the table. And just today, I was years old when I learned that the chief of WTO is a woman, and she's from the African continent. So it's like a historic thing, and I see those things happening slowly, but they're happening. The same for global biodiversity deal. The top chief of biodiversity negotiation is also from African continent, also a woman, very capable, very good negotiator. So I see more of those voices being brought to the table, and I think we should demand more of that and support these women and their leadership on that. And also, second part of the question is also what we ask as well. I think Oliver also brought amazing inspiration to me, how important it is to connect the voices, because big leaders doing their big leader thing, but how actually much power we have in our hands by doing the grassroots work, by demanding, by shouting. Even, very good example, I think, is the Fridays for Future. Started from one girl just protesting in front of the parliament, and it moved into global movement, and leaders started to listen to what she had to say, and I think this was super impactful. So organizing people, connecting them together can just bring amazing things. So just to answer your questions, what Pakistani people could do right now, I would try to imagine if I was there right now. I think it's also important that everybody's participating according to their, what they like to do and what they're good at. So not everybody needs to be organizer or leader. Some people might participate on other fronts. But I would be just simply so angry. I just want my voice to be heard. You can start recording, engaging in social media, just talk to other people and start shout, make your voice heard any way possible. I think that's important, and connecting with other people as well as part of the problem. And also, I love your question about food security, because this is something that is on my mind as well recently, because I've been working on biodiversity and seeing how much is related to agriculture, and also seeing what's happening right now with food problems globally. I come from Poland, so now we also get a lot of huge price increases in all the food products and energy and stuff. So I see my parents complaining to me about that. So I've been recently very much interested in thinking about how do we. I think what's important is the power of imagination. So we have to imagine what kind of future we want. How would the perfect world look like? What the food system in this perfect world would look like? What's my perfect idea for that? How do I want it to look? And then try to redesign back. It's quite a design thing. Just imagine first, have the alternative for the current system first, and then so from what I was looking at that, especially food-wise, my direction would be decentralized, getting communities, getting their own food, engaging in that.
Supply chain.
Their own community-based supply chains, foodscaping, those things is something I'm super excited about right now. Not relying on the huge global supply chains, but this is something I'm just learning about, so I cannot tell much more. But I sense this is the direction that I think we should kind of follow and get communities engaged in their own food production. So yeah. Sorry for taking too much space.
It's fine.
About the batteries, this is exactly the conversation I had with someone about the lithium, because I've been telling them, okay, electric cars are great, but the impact is huge for biodiversity, how much metals you really need to dig out, and nobody's talking about it. And he told me that, he literally said, I'm probably this is the argument that oil lobby is using. But I think whenever we find new solutions, we should also make sure that they're not causing more problems. It's important to electrify, but how do we ensure that we get those materials with a less impact possible? Actually, I've done a course on circular economy, and the current problem I understand is like actually recycling is too expensive to do. It's much cheaper to actually extract raw metals than do the extraction. So I've been saying like how do we make it cheaper, or how do we increase the price of raw metals so it actually makes economic sense to recycle those metals. I've seen just recently, like I think Japan is having problems with the supply chains, so they were forced to actually start recycling their own things to say. So that might be something like, but maybe experts know more about it. It's just some sense.
More experts, okay. Yeah.
Thanks. I'll be quick. So first on the EV question. So I think it helps to sort of contextualize this question a little bit. It's worth acknowledging that the biggest driver of emission reductions in the transport sector in sort of past 20-30 years has been fuel standard improvements. So regulated standards for fuel in various kinds of vehicles, and that's mostly being driven out of Europe, but also California and China's sort of come along with that as well. And that's what's driven huge improvements in the emissions performance of vehicles. And that's great. And maybe there are some areas where that can still lead to some improvements and help us reduce emissions further in the transport sector. But there's a big but there. If we accept that our target is net zero by mid-century, right, carbon neutrality, so that we can get our climate on track with what we're calling a relatively safe pathway for human society, let alone biodiversity in the environment, we need to find alternatives to oil as a way to power our transport. There's just no other way around it eventually. So yes, we can make improvements still to our combustion engine vehicles, but there's a limit to how much we can improve. We can't get to zero, right? We don't have any known technology at the moment which would get us to zero, so we need alternatives. Now, it's worth acknowledging that there is no energy technology in the world that doesn't have an environmental impact, right? Including solar and wind power, and including lithium batteries, right? These all have environmental impacts. So there's no point pretending that it's a purely green technology. Coincidentally, it is the argument that oil industry uses, but that doesn't mean it's not necessarily got a grain of truth to it. It does. So we need to be thinking about how we have the supply chains of these technologies, and how we take a very holistic perspective on these alternatives that are going to get us to net zero. So I don't think it's a black and white question of yes or no, do we use the technology or not. None of us are going to be able to control the energy sector overall. All of these technologies are going to have a role, and it's about managing the environmental impact over time. So that's just all I'd add to that point. But just the last two, I think you can link actually, because there was a question about what the youth can do, and then there was a point about how powerful the youth are as a polity in places like Pakistan. So let's educate the youth, let's get them up to speed on what the environment means to them and their future, and then make them, like Ola said, have their voice heard, because this is the future, the youth's future. And so if we can speak with one unified voice, then it will be very powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think I'll just take it to, it's not only about designing policies to just transform or to transform the way actually we use energy, or to transform the way we produce or consume food. But I think on a very down-to-earth basis, regarding Mr. Wahed cases, I think I would totally agree with you. First of all, the youth, they need to be aware that any of their action, their own action, is actually damaging the environment, because there should be this kind of self-awareness. On my own way, I can impact. It's linked with what I said earlier. A lot of people doing a little, it's actually a huge contribution. So I should be aware that my actions is also damaging the environment in the long term, so I should be self-aware. Number two, I will also totally agree with you, youth empowerment. adding value to yourself. Because now we talk about innovation. Innovation, we need to adapt to actually the new variables. We have so many cases, not only in Pakistan, India, also in Africa. Now youth are actually making, I would say, biodegradable bags out of a banana tree trunk. It's just a way for them to contribute. Yes, to contribute. And when you look at that initiative, it is little but then it was little enough to actually, when connected, as you mentioned, to be impactful. So that's how the youth can also have a say, can actually make a move in impacting decision making as well, like connected voices. But it's all about be self-aware. So to summarize, be self-aware that okay, I can't only request because I'm the torch bearer. I can't only request, but I also have to watch my own actions, but also have to add value to myself. Education, capacity building, also making a contribution. Because to summarize, it's not only to solve the pending issue, but it's about also leaving a legacy for the next generations.
Thank you so much, Mandu.
Well, this conclusion is quite soft, let's say. When you bring the circumstance of floor, like what's going on in Pakistan, how to fix the situation in Pakistan, in fact, it's a community. Like the mother knows what the kid needs, and like the neighbor knows what the neighbor needs. So like it is a matter of organizing community and communicating, and expressing its needs for like media or government, and organizing is the only way, right? Like at least like my point of view, we have a philosopher of education in Brazil, like called Paulo Freire, and he used to say that the only way for you to really understand the need of a student is understanding its reality. So it's the same for fixing what is broken right now, which is a whole society structure. So what was wrong in the past, the people know. So like if they organize, if they talk, if they slowly, like for example, there are so many institutions like GYLD or even United Nations, so like people can make those bridges. So like it's just a matter of organizing and communicate its needs, and like slowly, I think you gotta bring back. It's not a magical thing. It's not like an easy thing for sure. Otherwise, we were living in heaven, right? When it comes to EV, I think like the answer goes in the same way. It's a matter of like, what was the proposal of like EV was like to clean actually the air of the cities, right? Like it was just the cities. And I think the big but actually is the one sitting in the chair inside of a car alone. We need public transportation. That's a bigger answer, Like, and most of the pollution, at least in Brazil, comes from the transportation of goods. So the farms to the ports, all the trucks around, those are the higher pollution. But in fact, the battery is a challenge for science. We need those challenges. We need to face those situations. We gotta change. We gotta quit like carbon and like go for something new. Yeah. We just lost 2 months ago like a great thinker on this matter, like James Lovelock, who was a great thinker of like the Gaia theory, right? So in the end of his life, he was defending nuclear energy. He was his whole life against it. And near to the 90s, he's like, I was wrong. How come are you wrong? Like, what are you thinking about now? He was saying like, if you do something different, like it can be a solution of energy. It's stable, doesn't pollute, well controlled. China just recently construct like, I know, it's like a very acid topic. I mean, nuclear, like very radioactive like topic. But the challenges are there. We gotta face them. We have no solution. We have a lot of people. We gotta like face science. We got science. Like Deng Xiaoping and Zhou Enlai. Zhou Enlai started with Mao, and then like Deng Xiaoping embraced it. The four modernizations. You have industry. You have agriculture. You have defense. Now defense is about food defense. So like all the securities we need to develop. And now we have this science and technology. That's the way. That's the way of that's the past. You think like 1,000 years from now we're gonna keep using carbon? Maybe a better way. Brazil developed like what we call ethanol. It's working well, but it's creating monoculture. It's destroying forests. There's another problem. So science is the best. Like we gotta think the best. And every place, every community knows its better tool, with the better tool to use in its own location. There's no like universal answer. we are living the time of multiverse, right? Like if you go like for Marvel, like they're talking about multiverses, like there are many answers for different realities, yeah. And I think that's what we gotta go for. Sorry.
All right, I'll be quick. I think the only point that I want to add is, again, Wahid's question is very popular today, but when we talk about actions, for young people, or for the population in general, it's very important to, yes, solve the immediate crisis that's happening, and this is where all the forces should go right now, but also know where the future is and know what is the direction of the future. And by what are the actions that people can take in Pakistan or those who are from Pakistan. If you are in a city which is still functioning well, then you can perhaps think of the ways to donate some clothes or some other immediate in-kind needs, because we were talking with the NGOs and they said this is what we're accepting as well besides the donation. If you are in Lahore, you can come to the Scholar Lahore Hub event where we will be also organizing something in lumps within the university. So there are a lot of things that are happening within the smaller youth communities, but we, as you said about building a community, we have to just put together all the resources that we have, and the resources could be whether the financial or in-kind donations, and as well as human capacity resources, and see how can we help those young people who are affected, or kids, children that are affected right now, to perhaps have some sort of courses, right? Because there are classes, because schools, they will not be able to go to schools. And I think it's very important for children and young people and students to know that, hey, there's future, and there are people who are helping me, and I'm going to act as well, and I'm going to do everything in my capacity to have my home built, because at least my family is healthy and I'm healthy, and that means that there's future for us, for our community, neighborhood, and our country. And there are so many people from all the different parts of the world that are supporting us. And if you are a Pakistani who is not in Pakistan, then you can think of the ways to perhaps offering some online internships or putting in the resources that you can to support youth over there. Yeah, that'll be my thank you.
I actually didn't hear the questions, so you could try to answer them without actually knowing what it is. But we can brief me, so it's good.
We can ask new questions because we have all the time.
It's okay. Sorry. So Vika actually briefed me, so I know a little bit about what's going on. And I first want to answer the question about the EV. And as you have already mentioned, you know, there are problems and there are solutions, and then there's the buts. But I also think that on top of the EV buts, there is come out.
Too late.
But I think on top of the EV, there is. I personally don't think you know, EV pollution will become a major issue in the world. I would like to bring it back to, you know, the actions that governments are taking that they're not taking in adaptation. So EV has, you know, naturally is an incentivized investment for governments or for different organizations, because they will see return, and so we will definitely see advancements there. But when it comes to, you know, adaptation funds, and when it comes to things that they're not seeing returns, what are governments doing about that? And what are we seeing in Pakistan? It's clear evidence that the governments are not, the developed countries are not doing enough in adaptation funding, and so that there goes for the EV, and coming back to, you know, what youth can be doing in climate. So I recently got into a concept called transgenerational responsible leadership. So we as youth, I think that we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot of advocacy, talking about what we could be doing, or what we could, from the grassroots can be tackling climate and can do to tackle climate change. But this is not where things matter. I personally think that if you were going to have a world that we are going to be able to live in, the governments up there and the political leaders, the business leaders, have to do something right now. And they have to realize that from the grassroots, yes, we can be doing things, we can be advocating for climate change, we can be advocating for Pakistan. But what really matters is what they are doing right now in COP27 or in G20 or in all these important global events. And they have to recognize their responsibilities to us and to our future generations. And I would like to conclude there.
I think you got them so precise. Very nicely done, Vika. She worked her very good. I think that last point brings us to the point that Hugh also mentioned about election. Vote. When our voices and views matter, they make a difference, then we can prioritize these issues and push forward for the right governments, right policies, as journalists, as publishers, as researchers, as leading organizations. We have such a diverse panel here, and I think Jacob went for a COVID. Okay, he quietly, I didn't announce it, but he went for a COVID test. It is 6:30 p.m. We planned for 5, and I think actually we sitting here need to clap for everyone sitting in front of us. Thank you to the core team that made this possible. And I'll just say, we said 7 countries, but I'll name them. We have, I'll say both of you are like Canadian Chinese, Russian Chinese, Brazilian, Cameroonian, Australian, Poland, Pakistan, China, and the US. So we have a very diverse panel here. And actually, I think one thing that made me really emotional right now is that maybe 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't know that people care. I think people in Pakistan wouldn't know that so many people from so many countries not just care because they're looking, but they can really feel and relate, and it inspires us also. When we see suffering inspires us to do better. Really, when we see that, we realize there's so much we can do. It's not about perfection, it's about trying. And even when we talk about climate injustice, I will also add that within Pakistan also this is further climate injustice. The regions that are flooded are the ones that are the least among the less developed. So there's much more we need to do. This is just the beginning. Thank you, and thank you. And for now, we conclude, but the dialogue continues. Thank you so much.